could be our next big winner. Head over to gbnews.com/win now to find out how and get your entry for the Great British Giveaway. Great prizes, even greater wins.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, you're watching State of the Nation on GB News with me, Alex Armstrong. Tonight on the show, the Prime Minister has announced his new Albania migrant returns deal. I'll be revealing why this plan isn't all cracked up what it's meant to be. And meanwhile, as Starmer doubles down on his Island of Strangers rhetoric, a new poll has shown the majority of Brits are in favour of freezing migration. Surprise, surprise. The NHS has now updated guidelines to allow toddlers younger than 7 to be referred to gender identity clinics. Plus, the story you haven't heard about Ukraine. There is a spy thriller taking place between the Ukrainian and Hungarian governments, something that has gone entirely untold in the British media until today. Well, I've interviewed the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán's right-hand man to dive into this story and more. State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my panel, contributing editor of Novara Media, Michael Walker, and former Legal Migration Minister, Tom Pursglove. As ever, let me know your views, gbnews.com/your say. I'm here looking at them now. And head over to X as well, at GB News, if you want to get in touch with us via Twitter. But now it's time for your bulletins with Lewis Mackenzie.
Thanks, Alex. Good evening. It's just after 8 o'clock. Here are your latest GB News headlines. A man has been charged after fires at 2 properties and a car linked to Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. 21-year-old Roman Lovranovich, a Ukrainian national, has been charged with 3 counts of arson with intent to endanger life. Lovranovich was arrested in the early hours of the 13th of May and has remained in custody after warrants of further detention were obtained. The Prime Minister says the UK is in talks with a number of countries about return hubs abroad for migrants waiting deportation, although that will not include Albania. Sir Keir Starmer is in the country for talks with the Albanian Prime Minister to agree separate measures to crack down on organised crime and illegal migration. The PM took to collaborate with other European countries to fulfil his pledge to stop the boats. Pardon me. GB News has learned that the Home Office is spending tens of thousands of pounds on entertainment for migrants at a Kent processing facility. The results of a Freedom Information request show that more than £60,000 has gone on TVs with satellite channels, gaming systems and other entertainment at the Manston Processing Centre. The facility only houses migrants for an average of 48 hours after arriving in Kent before they are sent off to hotels and other government accommodations. A Home Office spokesperson has told GB News the majority of the expenditure occurred under the previous government. It was used on TV monitors which provide information and instructions for those at Manston. The new government is now reviewing this spend. The Chancellor has welcomed new figures that shows the economy has grown more than expected in the first 3 months of the year. She's been meeting workers and giving an address at the Rolls-Royce factory in Derby this morning as new figures show GDP increased by 0.7% between January and March, slightly stronger than economic forecasts. The Chancellor says it proves the government is moving in the right direction but accepts there is much more to do. R&B singer Chris Brown has been arrested in Manchester over an alleged bottle attack at a London nightclub 2 years ago. The American musician was arrested at a hotel in the city in the early hours of this morning by detectives from the Metropolitan Police. He is being held on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm at a nightclub in Mayfair back in February of 2023. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. There's more from me in an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. Well, the government is in full panic mode. Having wasted the first 9 months of its term in office dragging his feet on immigration, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, is now being forced to finally act as small boat crossings reach record highs under his watch and costs to the taxpayer balloon to the tune of billions of more pounds. So what's the latest act in this never-ending saga? Well, today the Prime Minister is in Albania, warming up so-called return hubs for illegal migrants. This is his latest attempt to appear tough on immigration, but obviously not act it. The plan is to send failed asylum seekers to these return hubs in third countries while they await deportation.
What now we want to do, and we're having discussions on, talks on, is return hubs, which is where someone's been through the system in the UK, they need to be returned, and we have to make sure they're returned effectively, and we'll do that if we can through return hubs. So that's what the talk's about. I would say in this area, no single measure is going to be the measure that is, if you like, a silver bullet. By putting it all together, arrests, seizures, agreements with other countries, returning people who shouldn't be here, and return hubs, if we can, through these talks, to add to our armoury, will allow us to bear down on this vile trade and to make sure that we stop those people crossing the channel.
Take note of the use of the Prime Minister's new favourite phrase, people who shouldn't be here, because it highlights the glaring flaw in his plan to stop the small boats. If someone has failed their asylum claim, that means they've already crossed the channel, have been put up in the infamous asylum hotels sprawling across the country and waited months for their claim to be reviewed. So much for a deterrent, eh? The shocking reality is that 76% of asylum seeker claims are granted in the United Kingdom, and migrants sitting in Calais know this. Any betting man would take those odds and cross the channel, wouldn't they? Reform UK's Lee Anderson put it plainly. He said the plan is a watered-down rehash of the Conservatives' failed Rwanda scheme. And frankly, I think he's right. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philps said this on X. Starmer has never cared about stopping illegal migration. He called immigration laws racist, fought deportations of foreign criminals, and dismantled every tough measure we put in place. The Tories' illegal migration record was no doubt a disaster, but it deserves credit on one single point. It recognised that the British public don't want to give asylum to people who cross the channel. The very act of crossing from France, a safe country, is an affront to the British sense of fairness we all hold. But this government's plan of clearing the backlog amounts to granting the right to stay to nearly everybody who breaks into our country. So who is the Prime Minister trying to appeal to? These policies are dead on arrival. They do not solve the underlying issues with our immigration system, nor do they please his left wing, nor go far enough to win over those people who simply don't believe a word he says on immigration. It would seem to any onlooker that this government is in total meltdown, pleasing nobody and making empty gestures that will have little to no impact other than wasting more of taxpayers' cash to look tough but change nothing about the reality. Well, joining me now to discuss this is immigration lawyer Shahab Khan. Thank you very much for joining me. This is a complete fallacy, isn't it, this policy? It's a worse version of Rwanda, which was at least trying to deter migrants from crossing the channel. Why would any migrant not take that risk when there's a 76% likeliness that they'll be allowed to stay in the United Kingdom?
Yes, I mean, obviously we don't have much detail about what exactly is being proposed. But no, I mean, I don't think it's definitely not worse than Rwanda. I think Rwanda was one of the worst schemes that could ever have been, contemplated. So I don't think it's worse than, but yeah, I mean, I think I agree with most of what you're saying. It is going to prove to be pointless. I mean, just in terms of, the few detail we have right now, at what stage does someone get sent there? Are they going to be safe there? And then what is the future? Do they get further, how do they get sent home after that? Or are they actually just languishing in whichever country we choose to send them to? So I think, obviously obviously lots of the detail is missing, but generally just the principle that I don't agree with is pushing our responsibility onto others. So at some point, we have to start taking responsibility. And we have to, these are people who come to us seeking refuge. We are the ones who have to deal with them.
Well, why is it our responsibility, Shahab? What's it got to do with Britain? We didn't cause the crisis. We didn't cause people to flood over here. We haven't got enough space for veterans who are sleeping rough on the street. But we're managing to find the money to put people up in hotels. We can't find money for a national grooming gang inquiry, but we've got money to put people up in hotels and feed them and look after them for months on end while they clear the backlog and eventually get citizenship. This country is crumbling under the pressure of mass migration. And why is this our responsibility?
For a number of reasons. So firstly, I like you say, it's not our fault, but it depends on where the people are coming from, what country and what conflict. So many of them, to be honest, are the fault of the Britain or our allies. So that's the first thing we have to realize, firstly. And then secondly, even if that particular crisis isn't our fault, then of course, the point is if someone's life is in danger, I don't think we should really be, pointing fingers thinking who's at fault there. The point is if we have a chance to save a human's life, that's something we should be doing just on a moral, ethical, humanitarian, human.
Well, I would totally agree with you, Shah, but many of these people are coming from France or have moved through multiple different countries across Europe, which is a safe continent. There's no wars going on across Europe other than in Ukraine. How do we reconcile that?
There's multiple reasons, and nothing is new in anything that I'm going to say now. But there's all sorts of reasons. Firstly, language. Obviously, more people speak English. Other languages they don't speak. They might have family here. They might have background here.
With all due respect, Shah, someone speaking English isn't a good enough excuse for them to be granted asylum in this country, just because they speak English and not French. I mean, the purpose of seeking asylum is to seek a safe haven.
But that's the thing. I'm just giving the reason why they might prefer Britain over France.
But preference isn't really a point, though, is it? It's not. You can I would prefer to work on the beaches of Australia, but unfortunately, I can't. That's the reality, is it not? I mean, they should be seeking safe haven, not having preference. And what you're saying to me is that actually they're seeking to come to the best economic conditions for them.
I didn't say economic conditions at all. I'm saying if...
Well, it was an implication of preference.
Yeah, no, that's not. The point is, yes, they would not be able to, especially another thing that we were, trying to say for ages now, they need to integrate. But how do you integrate, if you don't even speak their language? So obviously it's much easier for them to integrate in Britain if they speak English rather than other countries. But secondly, the more important thing, a lot of Europe, in fact, probably most of Europe, does take on much greater numbers than we do. So this point, this narrative, this myth that somehow everyone is arriving in Britain is completely false. And that's the important thing, that we take on a very, very small proportion of people who seek refuge in Europe. And if we're saying, you know, how does anyone ever come to claim asylum in the UK then, if the people coming from France aren't allowed that?
Unfortunately, we've got to leave it there. Immigration lawyer Shahab Khan, thank you very much for joining me. With me now is Labour activist Chris Worrell. Chris, thanks for coming on the show tonight. Look, as I was just saying there to Shahab, this policy is watered down Rwanda. Kemi Badenoch's right, isn't she?
I mean, look, the deal for return hubs is a pragmatic one. I think we've seen with Albania how they've said no, but the other Western Balkans are open to this. They've already got a deal with Italy. And what that means is that when there's failed asylum seekers, they can fast-track their removal while they process it. So it's got backing of the UN Refugee Agency as well, which was what actually sort of was part of the takedown of the Rwanda plan, which forced permanent resettlement in Rwanda. So from a legal perspective, it's less controversial and more effective in my mind. OK, well, look,
at the end of the day, what British people want to see is these migrant boats stopping crossing the channel. It's costing the taxpayer billions more now. We saw the numbers inflating. It's now costing us 15 billion potentially. Yeah. Look, this is going to do nothing to deter those people. They've got a 76% chance of becoming permanent residents of the country and claiming that refugee status. Does the government need to go further to tackle this crisis? Does the Prime Minister genuinely believe that these small return deals of a minority of the people that are claiming asylum is going to fix anything?
Well, you know, the return hubs are sort of glorified waiting rooms, and they're sort of part of the solution. I think when we go back to what the actual deterrent is, the cause of the sort of huge wave of illegal migration comes down from the fact that we didn't have a returns agreement. We've heard from the leaked messages from Chris Philp to that effect that they even knew this was the case. So part of the Border Security Command Bill, what we're seeing is their ability to not give them citizenship if you come by that route. That's a major deterrent. If before, they couldn't, because we didn't have a returns agreement from Brexit, Dublin Agreement and the EU-wide resettlement scheme, they were literally coming over and they couldn't send them back. It was absolutely farcical. What we're seeing is a deterrent for them to not come over in the first place, the lack of citizenship, and then fast-tracking the removal when they get rejected.
We've seen a lot of criticism of the Prime Minister. He's been this big deal of immigration the last week or so. He's like a bit of an epiphany, perhaps, I don't know, after the local elections. He doesn't seem like he's pleasing anybody, though. The left are very upset. Diane Abbott's been out attacking him today. Many others, Amnesty International's up in arms about these sorts of deals. Is this just pie in the sky? It's not going to help Labour win back any of the reform voters it's potentially lost in the red wall. It's not going to appeal to anyone wouldn't consider voting for Keir Starmer anyway. And it's not appealing to Labour activists either. Everything I'm hearing, by the way, is that you're hemorrhaging members to the Liberal Democrats, of all people.
I mean, I didn't have Alex Armstrong sort of giving a hoot what Diane Abbott said, but on my bingo card today. But
every now and then,
you get your dial in. But the main thing is we've got reform and live streaming. What sauce they're putting on the bacon sandwich? I think that was Lee Anderson today. I think when we're talking about the polling, Labour, Tory, and Reform voters all agreed with what his speech said the other day, and the immigration white paper is making some good recommendations. So, he's getting on with the policy agenda.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality for the Prime Minister is that he's going to have to at some point either get much tougher on immigration. Obviously, a lot of people care more about mass immigration. We're talking about legal routes, and which this white paper is going to address. But it doesn't talk about illegal migration. And this is a big problem for people, because we saw Patrick Christie's had that bombshell interviews and footage over in Calais the other day, and it's quite shocking. And they all think there's a lot of people who feel entitled to come to the country. What's the government going to be able to do to stop those people that are already queuing up in Calais, thousands of them? Because France has had over £500 million and nothing's changing.
Well, you're right. The immigration white paper is focused on legal migration. That's where we're giving it the 10 years until you can get citizenship. That's in line with Spain and Italy. And then you've got these wet liberals and some of the soft left crying about that. But let's just bring it in line with other places. When you're talking about the illegal migration, those are the things where if you come by the legal route, you're never going to get citizenship. So let's shut that down. And then we're going to move out as quickly as can, fast-tracking with return hubs. Now, that's already got the UN Refugee Agency approval. It's also being done by, I think, Holland and Uganda are looking at it. it, Denmark and Rwanda, but just for the failed and illegal migrants who have got no right to return, just moving them out fast track, so they're not sitting in hotels or you know, in this dispersed accommodation model.
You'd think, as a human rights lawyer, Keir Starmer would understand that actually deportations of illegal migrants, which is actually one of the biggest concerns to legal and British citizens who've been born here, that's nothing's going to change, because at the end of the day, the ECHR and other institutions will still block those things. Can you see a situation where these numbers don't go down and the Prime Minister has to move further to the right?
I think that the last 12 months have seen huge steps in immigration. On the ECHR, I think he did bring out the other day that it's going to close those loopholes. Like, there's no reason why Article 8, right to a private family, if you're a criminal, should stop you being deported. That's farcical. I think he's acknowledged that. And as far as immigration goes, as the sort of should he go to the right, the centre-left did annihilate the hard right in Denmark by taking these steps, and there are things that they can go further. There are sort of questions around whether it's parallel societies and how we look at Sweden and Denmark in that regard, and I wouldn't be surprised if they are looking at that. And if they're not, they should be. And then when we come back to how's the election going to play out, or how is polling going to play out, the main thing is that the public care number one about immigration. It's the top thing.
It's the top thing. It's the top. Yeah, all the statistics. Even Labour Party members now, it's one of their top priorities. They think it's too high.
Got Westminster bubble locked in.
There we go. Chris Worrell, Labour Party activist. Thank you for joining us. After the break, we're going to be debating whether it's time to implement a migration freeze amidst some shock new polling. We were just talking about that there, as well as asking whether we do in fact live on an island of strangers. Stay with us.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Are these two things linked? Is an excess of belly fat perhaps hindering our children's education?
Good morning. So you're quite right. It's not the actual belly fat that is causing the brain problem. It's more that what causes the belly fat to exist is also causing issues in the brain, essentially. So the belly fat is almost a side effect, and so is the reduced learning, the memory, the mood issues that we're seeing in the brain. So it's very important to understand that those two things are correlated, and actually the problems that go behind it are what we need to target. So it's not just about, we're not just trying to body shame young people, we're actually trying to look at what are the cofactors, essentially. So that could be sleep, lack of exercise, overuse of technology, loneliness, would you believe it? And of course, diet.
The headline essentially has run away with itself. It's conflating the two and making it sound like belly fat is an issue for our children's education, when in reality, it's a matter of actually we need to be encouraging healthier habits, a better diet, more sleep. As you mentioned, loneliness, for example. Is it healthy, though, for these headlines to suggest, like you said, potential for body shaming, potential for, parents getting the wrong impression? Is that what the real issue here is?
I mean, everything has a positive and a negative side. If any parent looks at this and thinks, oh my gosh, I'm seeing my child is getting a little bit podgier around the middle, I need to do something, and kicks them into action. And same with children, it's not a bad idea to inform them and educate them about diet and exercise, and it's good to know about those things.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. Let's just get some of your views on that Albania deal. What have we got here? Will Hull says Starmer is dropping new clangers every day. He's digging a deeper hole he won't be able to get off. Both sides will collapse in on him. Rita says Starmer needs to announce that if they come over illegally, they will never be granted asylum, nor will they receive benefits. Well, there you go. Well, following Sir Keir Starmer's Albania Return Hub announcement earlier today in an interview with GB News, he doubled down on his controversial rhetoric.
I've always said that our country should be able to walk forward into the future in a way which is bringing our communities together, our neighbours together, and that's why I'm clear that we shouldn't be an island of strangers.
Don't grab your remote, because what I'm about to say is going to shock you. I actually agree with the Prime Minister. I think his speech hit the right marks. And actually, a majority of the public do as well. Yes, another poll today has revealed that nearly half of all Brits believe it's time for a freeze on migration. Well, to talk about this, I am joined by my panel, contributing editor for Novara Media, Michael Walker, and former Immigration Minister, Tom Pursglove. Tom, what did you make of Keir Starmer's Island of Strangers speech? Well, I think it will probably go down dubbed as that. What did you make of that speech?
Well, obviously the rhetoric is the rhetoric, but you need to look behind the rhetoric. And frankly, the policy announcements are inadequate, because talk of getting to a net zero position on legal migration is a million miles away from where the changes that Keir Starmer has announced will get us. Obviously, the ONS are talking about figures of around 340,000 net migration. There are internal Home Office figures, if we understand that from the newspapers, that are talking about figures still over 500,000. I don't think that meets the mark. And ultimately, that does mean that you cannot properly integrate people into our communities. That is a major problem. And we also see all the massive knock-on consequences when it comes to our infrastructure. There's been a lot said about prisons this week and overcapacity issues in prisons. You've got all of the challenges around housing that I think your viewers around the country would recognise, as well as those day-to-day pressures on public services like schools and hospitals. Yeah,
Michael, I mean, look, you know, the rhetoric has been slammed by many people across the left. Diane Abbott, Jeremy Corbyn saying it was he's a new Enoch. Maybe he made it Enoch Powell, but he's compared to similar sort of speeches before. Do you agree with the left sentiment on his rhetoric?
Well, I mean, I think the reason he used that rhetoric is precisely to start a row, because, I mean, Keir Starmer policy speeches don't normally get commented on news shows for a week, right? They're normally sort of forgotten within about an hour. So I think he intentionally provoked this argument. I actually personally think the Island of Strangers line wasn't the big problem with the speech. He wasn't saying... Obviously, Enoch Powell was saying that white people would be strangers because they're overwhelmed by non-white people, whereas Keir Starmer is talking about sort of everyone, sort of people who live here, immigrants, people of all races, saying we would prefer integration. Right? That's what he was saying. There were some lines that I do think were fairly unpleasant. So I think sort of calling it a squalid chapter, and also saying that the migration over the past 3 or so years had done incalculable harm. I think that's overblown. I think that, you know, as most people, I don't think it's sustainable to have net migration of 900,000 people a year. The idea that that's done sort of incalculable harm to the country, I think, is an overstatement.
Yeah, I think looking at the poll numbers earlier today, it was only 2% of people that were polled agreed that numbers should be over, I think, 1 million a year, which is, unfortunately, Tom, the previous Conservative government saw those numbers. Can the Tories ever be trusted to really be attacking Keir Starmer on his policy announcements when they oversaw this, or are we turning a corner here for the Conservative Party?
So I certainly got it as Legal Migration Minister and did something about it in those final few months of the government with that kind of massive package that has actually seen net migration falling. It was the right thing to do. I always said that I thought we'd need to go further. And actually our policy in the general election, and I was out on television sets talking about this, and I maintain it was the right answer, was that we should have very firm annual caps. That remains the Conservative position, and that allows you to take a view year to year with a vote in Parliament about what the level should be. Now, I think the public is in a place where actually they want to see that much closer to the net zero position than they certainly do the 900,000 or the 500,000 that is being talked about in Home Office.
It's the majority of people that want it one in, one out now.
Exactly. And one of the things that worries me about the white paper that we've seen published today is that there is swathes of detail that's not in there. So, for example, there's not a proper link between the skills and training provision that businesses are putting in place and their reliance on visas. Things like the social care visa, capping that off, there's no firm dates around that. there is just a lack of detail, and that really worries me. For example, the ILR changes, which are, again, an important Conservative policy that we've been espousing for several months now, what the government is putting in place, or proposing to put in place, sees loads of carve-outs from that. So my concern here is that it's just not going to achieve the cut that people want to see. And actually, in the meantime, because there's going to be a delay in delivering any of this, what you're actually like to see is a closing down sale, which is also a disaster because people who think they might be affected by the changes are likely to try and get on with it very quickly. So actually, you could see numbers going in the wrong direction to start with.
You know, whilst I agree with Keir Starmer's rhetoric, I share Tom's concerns about the actual detail and particularly whether I actually believe what he says. This is a man, as highlighted by the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp today, they're called immigration laws racist in the past. Can the British public trust Keir Starmer to get on top of immigration in this country, or is it just all pie in the sky?
Well, I don't think any of the political parties are being honest with the public, because there's basically a really difficult trade-off, which is to say, if you were to have something like net zero migration, I know sort of a poll has said that a lot of people would like that, you would have to have much higher taxes. And that's because you would have to really significantly raise wages in social care. And so you need a politician.
Is that a response to the symptom of undercutting those wages with cheap foreign labour?
Well, no, but I mean, they're similar points, right? So we pay social care so badly and it has so little career progression that the only people who really want to do that job are people who have recently arrived in the UK. Obviously, there'll be some people who aren't recently arrived, but the only way we can fill those jobs is with people who are recently arrived. So if you want to reduce net migration, you're going to have to increase the pay of social care workers to encourage British people to do it, or people who are already here, and that will mean increases in taxes. So sort of a politician has to be brave enough to say this is the choice you've got to make.
Yeah, that's also not made easier, of course, by things like the national insurance changes that make it harder for businesses to actually try and do the right things.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you to my panel. In a moment, we'll be looking at some of the shocking news coming out of the National Health Service. If you thought the trans children debate was settled, you're in for a big surprise. That's coming up after the break.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Welcome to your holiday sun forecast, and there will be some sunshine for Italy following some unsettled weather this week. Blustery showers, though, pushing into Greece, some heavy downpours and strong winds. That eases away over the next few days, and we're seeing the last of the showers clear southern Italy, with plenty of sunny spells returning. Spain and Portugal, perhaps the places to be. Plenty of dry weather, some patchy cloud, otherwise largely sunny skies. A few showers for Italy, but most places looking good into next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Over the coming days, high pressure remains dominating our weather, which means lots of dry, settled weather, lots more sunshine to come, though it's eastern areas where it can often be cloudy and a lot cooler, and it's all thanks to high pressure sitting to the north of the country, dragging in a northeasterly flow, so more of a breeze here and much more cloud too. And we'll see that pattern as we head through this evening and overnight. More cloud clipping into southern parts of Scotland, northeastern parts of England, and then towards dawn across central and southern parts. This cloud quite low at times, possibly even bringing some mist and fog, but many areas should remain dry, rather clear, but that does mean temperatures are going to slip away, particularly across Scotland, perhaps even some rural frost by the time we reach the early hours of the morning. So to start, it could be a little bit chilly, perhaps some low cloud across the very far northeast of the country, perhaps eastern parts of Aberdeenshire, but otherwise largely dry, clear and similar across Northern Ireland and northern parts of England, though once again low cloud creeping into eastern counties. Elsewhere across England and Wales, a fairly bright start once again, still a little bit chilly, but warming up nicely through the course of the day. Once again, particularly western areas feeling very warm in wall-to-wall sunshine, but across eastern areas still that low cloud set to linger, still a decent breeze here too, so often feeling chillier with cloudier skies, but otherwise lots of warm sunshine, highs reaching around 23 degrees Celsius across the south. Then as we head into Saturday, the beginning of the weekend, likely a bit more cloud to start the morning, some mist and fog in places, but once again, eventually through the morning, we'll see it clear through, and by the afternoon, wall-to-wall blue skies, plenty of sunshine, but still a chance we could see that low cloud lingering across eastern areas, and it remains fairly similar as we turn into Sunday and Monday, with temperatures widely in the low 20s.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Can a toddler under the age of 7 be transgender? Many of you might have thought we settled this debate long ago, but apparently not. The NHS has removed a proposed age limit that would have prevented children under 7 from being referred to specialist gender identity clinics. Initial guidance suggested that under 7s were just too young, for such services, but now new guidance will allow children of any age to be treated by the NHS after pressure from transgender advocacy groups. Well, to talk about this, I'm now joined by Steph Richards, CEO of Translucent. Steph, we've been having this debate in the country about, of course, what a woman is. We've had that sorted out through the Supreme Court. We've had the Health Secretary come out quite strong when the government was sort of just won its election, saying we're going to stop all this stuff around gender identity. But you know, children under the age of 7 surely shouldn't be getting any care when it comes to transgender issues, because we can't have children just can't be transgender under the age of 7, surely.
Are you suggesting that kids shouldn't have health care? Because it's a human right under the European Convention of Human Rights, the Human Rights Act, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So kids can have health
Steph,
care.
what I'm suggesting is that a child under the age of 7 surely won't know if they're transgender or not.
They're gender questioning. There's a difference between being trans and gender questioning. We've done our own survey in 2022. We found that out of 516 respondents, 38% of the adult trans community knew that they were gender questioning at under 9. Another further 23% were gender questioning at 13 and 16% at under 18. So that's 77% of trans adults were saying that they knew they had gender questioning issues in very early age of childhood. And indeed, I was a trans kid. I didn't identify as trans, but I knew that at the age of 5, that my neurobiological sex wasn't meeting my genitalia.
We also have it. Is there not a problem here with when there's children who haven't fully developed even full communication skills yet, potentially as young as 4 years old, are being referred to services? How can a 4-year-old be questioning their gender? Some of them don't even understand the concept of gender at 4 years old.
They don't ask to go to gender identity clinics. The parents.
Well, then who's pushing them? Well, I think the question is then, what is a parent doing pushing the child to a gender clinic at the age of potentially 4 years old? This is the problem, isn't it? We seem that this seems to potentially be coming from parents. It's not from the actual children.
No, it's coming because the children's gender play expression, perhaps of playing with dolls, or in regards to perhaps young girls being more masculine, wanting to do rough and tumble play. So I suspect it's actually coming from the way that the child's doing their gender expression, not in regards to.
But this is for hundreds of years. There's been, you know, boys playing with girls' toys, maybe a little bit more feminine, girls playing with boys, tomboys. It doesn't necessarily mean they're transgender and should be going through treatment clinics.
Well, as I say, we're not identifying them as trans, are we? We're identifying them as gender questioning.
It gets to a point where the previous, under the previous government, there was a minimum age of 7. It was then claimed they were just too young, which I think any sensible person would say. Any child under the age of 7 years old surely cannot be questioning their gender. It's coming from the parents. This is the point. It's not the child, it's the parents. It's the overarching parents who've got potential ideological preferences, pushing their children and reaffirming something that may not exist.
That's a pretty heavy statement.
I don't think so. I think I really don't. I really don't think that's very heavy at all. I think parents might be pushing ideology onto their children. We see it all the time.
Well, I would disagree with that. Most parents are trying to do their very best for their children. I'm sure if you had kids, you would be doing the best for your kids as well.
Well, maybe we just disagree on the fact that I don't think sending children under the age of 7 years old to a gender clinic is a very sensible or very reasonable thing to do to children, if I'm being completely honest with you. But some of these kids are being considered to have gender dysphoria. Again, like you said, taking a liking to toys or clothes typical of the opposite sex. This is a problem with parents. And obviously we've got transgender, activist groups pushing this stuff onto the NHS. This is a waste of money, isn't it? It's damaging to children.
With the greatest of respect, the Cass review put up the barrier that kids couldn't get to the gender identity clinics until they'd gone to CAMS. So the current wait for CAMS is, on average, 2 years. Indeed, if you refer to the Children's Commissioner, he turned around in March 2024 and said that 1 in 12 kids under 18 were getting referred to CAMS. When you look at the actual stats, that the number of kids that are gender questioning, you're looking at 1 in every 2,000. 1 in every 2,000. So perhaps we shouldn't be making a story about trans kids and talking about the issue of anxiety, which is actually the major issue why children with their
Steph Richards, CEO of Translucent, thank you for joining me on that. I've got a right reply from NHS England here. They have said the primary objective for the service of children under the age of 7 is to provide support and guidance to the parents, carers, rather than initiate clinical interactions with the child. The appropriateness of a referral of a child under 7 would be first agreed by paediatric or mental health specialists and the new Children and Young People's Gender Services through pre-referral consultation. OK, moving on. In other news, BBC presenter Gary Lineker has been forced to apologise after sharing a post on Instagram that included a picture of a rat, claiming he would never knowingly share anything anti-Semitic. Is it time to simply sack Gary Lineker? Well, I'm rejoined now by my panel contributing editor for Novara Media, Michael Walker, and former Immigration Minister Tom Pursglove. Tom, this isn't the first time Gary Lineker's had to apologise. The BBC is essentially a state-funded broadcasting. We can call it a bunch of other things, but that's my opinion. At what point do we say, he's got political opinions, he's putting them out there to a massive audience, he's paid for, essentially, by the taxpayer, anyone who owns a computer, a phone or a TV these days, surely he's gone too far.
I think everybody's a bit fed up with it, actually, aren't they? And in a sense, I would describe some of Gary Lineker's views that he regularly expresses as being sort of luxury views that are detached from the realities of many of the people who watch the programmes that he presents. And the BBC is all about trying to provide inclusive viewing, and I think it acts as a massive distraction. And actually, really, the model that perhaps the BBC ought to be looking at is the same as, for example, police officers or civil servants or others. who work in public services, is a public service broadcaster, where actually they don't get involved in providing a running commentary on politics, because actually what they should be about is delivering an inclusive service that people can access.
Yeah, well, surely, Michael, it gets to a point where you say, oh, gosh, if you're apologising this often, you're not learning anything. And at the end of the day, if taxpayers are paying this man's pretty tremendous salary, essentially, I keep saying taxpayers, they're not, they're licence fee payers, to be correct. At what point do we say enough is enough? If this were the other side, if this was someone talking about anti-Palestinian things, there would be outrage, wouldn't there?
Well, the BBC employ Gary Lineker to do football commentary, which he's very good at, and their viewers really enjoy his football commentary. That's why they've kept him in the job. Yes. He was very difficult. They've moved him on now, but the reason he was very difficult to sack is because he's very good at his job.
He's still covering the World Cup, I believe.
In terms of the politics, we've got to think here, the context in which he was... So he shared I haven't even seen the cartoon, but the cartoon he shared apparently had an anti-Semitic trope. But that is amid many, many posts which Gary Lineker does about the genocide going on in Gaza, right? So Israel hasn't let any food or water get into Gaza, which has 2 million people, hundreds of thousands of kids, for 10 weeks. Right? You've got the UN begging world leaders to do something to stop mass starvation of a suffering people. Now, if that is something you consider a luxury belief, that seems a bit
I'm talking more generally.
But what Gary Lineker was talking about, what Gary Lineker has talked about so much, and what he gets in most trouble for, is his comments about what's going on to the children in Gaza.
OK, unfortunately, we have to leave that there. In a statement, Gary Lineker said, on Instagram, I reposted material which I have since learned contained offensive references. I very much regret those references. I take full responsibility for this mistake. That image does not reflect my views. It was an error on my part for which I apologise unreservedly. OK, thank you to the panel again. After the break, we'll be revealing the hidden spy thriller taking place behind the war in Ukraine from Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's right-hand man, nonetheless. We'll see you after the break.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new Royal Newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Today, the Russia-Ukraine peace summit took place in Istanbul. But Vladimir Putin was nowhere to be seen, was he? Well, while peace talks drag on, there's another explosive story unfolding, something you haven't heard before. Days ago, Ukraine claimed to have uncovered a Hungarian spy ring allegedly gathering military intel, hinting at a potential incursion into western Ukraine. Well, Hungary's foreign minister slammed the accusations as propaganda and expelled 2 Ukrainians labelled as spies under diplomatic cover at the embassy in Budapest. Earlier this week, I spoke to Viktor Orban's confidant Zoltán Kovács, Secretary of State for International Communication, about Hungary's controversial stance on Ukraine. Take a look at this. There's been some quite big developments between Hungary and Ukraine, at least since I last spoke to some of your politicians. Obviously, seemingly Hungary is against membership of the European Union for Ukraine and against NATO membership for Ukraine. But of course, recently we found out that there's been this big fallout between the two of you over some spying allegations. Ukraine has accused you of spying on them. You've accused them of spying on you. What is going on?
But the kind of provocations you've seen lately are not new. They date back before the starting of the war, as a matter of fact. So for some curious reason, which is basically nation building, probably the kind of, let's call it nationalism, the Ukrainians have chosen. It all started back in 2015 when they started to cut back on the linguistic and minority rights of Hungarians living across the borders. Let me know, the viewers, the listeners, that we have 150,000 people, Hungarians, living across the border for historical times, for the past 1,000 years. Borders have changed. They remained in their spaces. And, official state policies and local atrocities have been coming on the local minority. And also, if you take a look at the communication political strategy of the recent Ukrainian government and president, it's fairly active, if I'm visual. It's fairly aggressive, if I'm direct and on the ground, which is a little bit strange, because if a country wanted to become member of the European Union, very obviously we believe should be fulfilling all the criteria actually that was there for us. You have
the ability to veto membership.
That's
is
right.
that correct?
Membership has always been a matter of capabilities, and that is. You have to fulfill all the criteria.
Sure.
It takes a long time, maybe 10, 15 years. Take a look at the Western Balkan countries. And they have the right to apply for, and the member states have the right to say if they are ready. And we believe they are not ready. So we don't deny the right that they would like to become a member of the European Union, but neither the existing circumstances, the raging war, the uncertainties about how Ukraine is going to look like, very obviously the costs of rebuilding and integrating a country which is not prepared in any way actually for European membership is against the Hungarian national interest. That's so simple.
Well, there's something that's thrown around about Hungary quite a lot, is that you are in the pocket of Russia. I think the European Commission, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said there's foreign interference through the back door when alluding to Hungary. How do you respond to those remarks?
And many such and similar remarks. But the last time I've looked at Hungary was a medium-sized country. It would be very difficult to fit to anybody's pocket. As a matter of fact, we've been pursuing a policy and policy-making of national interest, and that is all that matters, all that comes first is the Hungarian interest, including not only Hungary, the proper, but also the Hungarians who are living across the borders. And I can tell you that there are good examples, especially with the Serbians, with Slovakia. As a matter of fact, we hope that that will be the case, and that should be the case with Romania. We've been working very heavily on proving that if you invest in Hungary in terms of trust, cooperation, and the genuine partnership, we can demonstrate to you that we are ready for that. And that's what we expect actually from the Ukrainians, and that is missing for the moment.
So you reject those, you reject strongly those calls that you're in the back pocket of Russia.
Having a common sense relationship with Russia. I'll tell you one example. You wanted to have peace talks with Russia. Sending out messages, sending out the kind of arrogant messages actually you see all the time to ask for a demand for things from Russia is not going to work. It's for the past 3 years, we all know that the Russians are not going to fulfill any of the demands, not to say the blackmailing actually that are coming from different corners of the world. And take a look, the change of attitude, say on behalf of the new US President Donald Trump, has made huge difference actually. There are negotiations. It is possible to negotiate, but first you have to change your mindset, and that is the minimum level of respect should be shown towards the other side. There should be the recognition that there are other perspectives on the conflict going on and raging in Ukraine and the whole environment in which it has all started. You don't have to accept it, but you have to recognize that there are different perspectives on that conflict.
Who should give way first, Ukraine or Russia?
Well, it's difficult to say, and definitely neither myself nor Hungary is in the position actually to tell who should be the stepping back. But it is the only way through, and understanding each other and eventually find who is going to do what is talk to each other. The Hungarian mandate is very strong on that because it is coming. The war broke out in the midst of our last general elections. So we have a very strong constitutional majority mandate actually to go for peace. The Hungarians have decided that there are not going to be Hungarian weapons supplied for Ukraine, no participation in any kind of warlike or helping the war effort kind of measure on behalf of Hungary, but we provide all humanitarian aid. This is the biggest humanitarian operation actually for the past 3 years Hungary has ever conducted.
Fantastic. Zoltán Kovács, Secretary of State for International Affairs. Thank you very, very much for coming on board. Appreciate it. Yeah, that was Zoltán Kovács, Hungarian Secretary of State for International Communications. Up next is Patrick Christys. Welcome back, Pat. What have you got on your show?
Well, in the last few moments, there is some quite significant breaking news. It looks as though one of the illegal migrant camps that we went and exposed here for GB News on Tuesday has just been raided, / is currently being raided, by French police. So we're going to bring that to you. And I think if that is the case, it means that GB News has done more to smash the gangs than the entire Labour government so far. So maybe they should just put us in charge of the whole thing. All of that and much, much more coming your way after your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Over the coming days, high pressure remains dominating our weather, which means lots of dry, settled weather, lots more sunshine to come, though it's eastern areas where it can often be cloudy and a lot cooler, and it's all thanks to high pressure sitting to the north of the country, dragging in a northeasterly flow, so more of a breeze here and much more cloud too. And we'll see that pattern as we head through this evening and overnight. More cloud clipping into southern parts of Scotland, northeastern parts of England, and then towards dawn across central and southern parts. This cloud quite low at times, possibly even bringing some mist and fog, but many areas should remain dry, rather clear, but that does mean temperatures are going to